Peace. My name is Azzariah Ibn Bey, and this is a series of videotapes dealing with the occult sciences, the actual sciences that the Moors have practiced throughout history, giving you a historical perspective, also dealing with the Moorish science. The Moorish science and history is very beautiful and also very enlightening once you begin to educate yourself on our ancient occult sciences or our ancient culture, which is probably no actual beginning to this. But we can go back and try to pick a point in time wherein we came into the physical, and history beginning on the physical level, we can begin to try to track this, dealing with certain sciences in the attempt to escape back into which we originally come from. I got a lot of questions on the, by the way, this is the second part of tape 2. And I got a lot of questions concerning a few things on the menstrual blood and the elixir of life, and I'm going to answer a couple of those questions for those who are seeking that type of information. But here's a very interesting magazine. It's called the Sage Woman. This particular magazine is dealing with various ways to use the menstrual blood. This is a woman's magazine, or womanist magazine, and it's actually dealing with how to use the menstrual blood in certain foods that our wives or our mates may give us unknowingly, because you got to understand something. Whether you want to believe this or not, most of us, most men, have either eaten or drank the menstrual blood of our wives or mates. You see, if you have a wife who, or a girlfriend who you met and she couldn't cook when you met her, but now later on, or after a while, her food begins to taste good, you got to understand why, you see. Of course, practicing to cook also plays a big role in that, but you got to understand that even the church women, you see, even church folk are dealing with this particular science. And I'm talking not from something I read, but firsthand experience. And many of you know this. So yes, it may seem very negative and based on our thinking, and in certain instances it probably is, mainly because of the cleanliness of our women today, walking around with weaves in their head and don't know how to take care of their body, not eating the right foods. Of course, the menstrual blood carries a lot of iron. For the unhealthy woman, I wouldn't advise even dealing with that, you see, unless you're a person with patience and willing to nurse a woman to a certain type of health for the benefit of both of you. And not only that, but then you have to find an open-minded person in that instance also. But Sage Woman is a very interesting magazine. It's a womanist magazine. This particular issue is the summer 2000, and it's called on the bottom here it says Our Wise Blood, and it's dealing with various recipes that women use with their menstrual blood, you see, and quite a few other things. So I want to answer a couple of questions that we discussed on the last tape, which was dealing with the elixir of life. If you want to know more about at the end of the first tape, I talked about the Holy Grail, talked about mermaids, talked about few things to give you a general overview of that second tape. This particular tape I'm going to go into some other things that's going to help you understand the next tape, but also, like I said, want to deal a little bit more with the questions I had got. One of the questions was, why did I use so many white images in my last videotape? Well, I explained in the first videotape, and if you see the first videotape, it's full of black images. But most of the occult scientists were learned from the Moors. And when they begin to learn from the Moors, they begin to recopy and add their own interpretation of things. And they drew the images that they felt that pertain to them, you see, although it's your science. So you have to, although images present visual teaching, for instance, the white Jesus in the church, children learn more from what they see of that image than what you could tell them, you see. So it can be a type of mind control if you don't know the science that's going on dealing with that. So yes, images are visual preaching. But for the occultists, or for the purpose given in these particular tapes, is to give you the eye to see beyond the color scheme, to reach inside those particular images and draw out that which is yours. Because in most of the books, comic books, occult books, these are our ancient knowledge rewritten, recopied by European. And so they put their images in there, you see. Some do it for race reasons, but others do it because they're not thinking on racial terms. They're thinking on, this is their knowledge, this is something they learn, and they want to write it down, you see, you know, for their people. It comes from him as he sucks it in from Africa or from whatever part of our culture he gets it from, reevaluates it to his particular swing, you see, and draw whatever. Most of them are artists also. Most great thinkers are artists, you see, writers, you see. So when you see these particular images in these books and magazines, and that's mostly what our children read, is a lot of these comic books, they see these television shows, they see white images. So these particular tapes, or that last tape, was to let you see what goes on as far as our culture is concerned in these white images, and now you, as a teacher of your own children, can reinterpret these things for them, you see. Because most of the images you see, written by these people, once again, are white images. And so now you have to look at them when your child reads a comic book, heavy metal magazine, or whatever. You got to realize that although it looks white for face value, it's very black. Very black. And I talk about that on the first tape. So another question I had received for someone was that, why did the witch in The Wizard of Oz want the ruby slippers from Dorothy? Now, that's a very interesting question because I didn't get into all the sciences of these particular fairy tales, elemental stories, but there's a lot of information that teach these particular moralistic stories. One, first of all, most of all the fairy tales come from the Moors, you see, reinterpreted by the European or by the white man or the Caucasian or whatever name you want to give it. By the way, we're going to deal with that because on the last tape, I made a statement at the end of the tape that the white man came first. Of course, I'm not talking about the white man you see. I'm talking about something on the occult level, and we're going to deal with that. We're not talking about the white man you see walking around here. Of course, he wasn't first. We are much earlier than him, but we're going to get into that. But you got to understand something. There were 3 women in The Wizard of Oz. You had Glenda the Good Witch, you had Dorothy, and you had the Wicked Witch of the West. That right there is the triple goddess. The Glenda the Good Witch took the menstrual blood or the red shoes off of the dead witch and put it on Dorothy's feet. Remember, the lowest part of the body is dealing with the root chakra, which is also the area from which a woman menstruates, down on her feet, from the lowest chakra, and that's why the ruby slippers are on her feet, the lowest part of the body, because in mythology, so-called mythology, which is really a remnant or a moralistic principle dealing with truth, you see, in the center of all lies lies the truth. So on her feet were the ruby slippers, and they were on Mother Earth, you see. In mythology, the creator of the physical, of the earth and all the planets was the menstrual blood. And we're going to talk about that when we get to the Nag Hammadi library. So you had the triple goddess, the three women, the three main characters, the Glinda the Good Witch, Dorothy, and, of course, the Wicked Witch, wherein Dorothy starts off at the beginning and leads a trail to Emerald City, you see. But the reason why the Wicked Witch of the West wanted the slippers was that she represents the wise one, which was the witch, which was the latter aspect of the triple goddess, which was the non-menstruating woman who kept the menstrual blood within, because the menstrual blood embodied all wisdom, which was the creation of all things. And so you had the triple goddess, the three aspects of mainly the black woman, you see, mainly the black woman. Again, you have to look past, the person who wrote this was Frank Brahm. He's a white man. Of course, he's going to use his own people. For us, we have to reinterpret these things because these are elemental stories that the Moors, earlier than the Moors recultivated it. But these are ancient stories, you see. These are ancient stories. And so, that's why you had Dorothy clicking her red heels together 3 times, you see. There's no place like home, which is, of course, the triple goddess, the 3 aspects of the black woman, which is, of course, why she clicked her heels together 3 times, you see, 3 times. So another similar typology, or similar story to that is the moralistic story of Little Red Riding Hood. And I think we talked a little bit about that, but you have to understand that Little Red Riding Hood represents the menstrual blood. She goes through the pubic hair, which is the woods. And her mother, same thing with the Glinda the Good Witch, her mother sends Red Riding Hood through the woods with a basket of goodies to Grandma's house. Grandma represents the stream of blood, or the person who takes the stream of blood in. That's why the Red Riding Hood was going to Grandma's house. The wise one, Lilith. Of course, this is much earlier. Lilith is just a point that I'm picking to describe this science to you. Of course, it's much earlier than Lilith. Much earlier. The white boy wants to give you this history of some Jewish man who kills and drinks blood and all this kind of stuff. Bram Stoker and all these kind of things. These things is his version of a person who was just a murderer like all the rest of them. You see. That's not dealing with science at all. What I'm giving you is dealing with the actual true science, dealing with the principles surrounding this. You see, although, as I said before, these in Europe, they actually believed that they would kill and eat the flesh and drink the blood of people. You see, they did these things and still do it today. You see, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Moorish science. You see. So, Little Red Riding Hood actually she represents the menstrual blood, and she, talking about werewolves again, which was the anima within man. Anima representing a female aspect, who men have a menstrual cycle also. You see? And that's why the wolf ate grandma and waited for the menstrual blood to come with a basket of goodies. The basket of goodies represents all the melanin, the iron, and all the things that are within this particular elixir of life, which was what the werewolf was waiting for, you see. And that's why when you look at werewolves, werewolves change under the silver moon, which was dealing with Quicksilver, which was dealing with Hermes, you see, which was dealing with Hermes. And we explained a lot of that on the first tape. So you got to understand that's dealing with the whole Little Red Riding Hood, Wizard of Oz, all these particular fairy tales. As a matter of fact, there was a fairy tale called The Girl Who Lived with the Gazelles, and there was a Moorish tale. From this particular Moorish tale, you get Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, The Little Mermaid, Princess and the Pea, Rumpelstiltskin, and Rapunzel. All of those plays, or all of those moralistic principles or stories, fairy tales, come from this one fairy tale called The Girl Who Lived with Gazelles. You see, you got to understand that. Now, something very interesting about werewolves that I didn't talk about before, and that is that the word werewolf, though, actually comes out of England. And in England, what happened is when the Moors began to first train these people, they misinterpreted a lot of things, had to be retaught, and colleges had to be set up, schools had to be set up so they can continue to teach these people. But they went out and they actually killed wolves and put these particular wolf skins on them. And this later became a type of ceremony, wedding ceremony, hunting ceremonies. But when they put when they killed this wolf and put the wolf skin on them and wore it in these particular rituals and ceremonies, this is where you get the term werewolf from, was to wear the wolf, you see. Put the actual skin of the wolf on your back. Wear the wolf, you see. Wear the wolf. So, also, when you hear when you see a owl, we talked about the owl dealing with Lilith, meaning the wise one. Put an H on the owl, you get the howl, which is when the wolf sees the full moon, he howls, you see. Owl, howl. You got to understand, this all ties in. And so, in Egypt, you had Anubis. Anubis was actually the god of the underworld, who is the underworld being what? The menstrual or the vagina. The world that's the lowest part of the body before the legs start. That's the underworld. The pussy, the actual pussy, you see. Anubis. You got to understand this stuff. And that's where you get, in phrases that we use today, what's up, dog? Our youth, and even ourselves, we talk about what's up, dog, or where my dog's at. And as a matter of fact, when you watch some of these cartoons and a pretty woman walks by, the guy looks at the woman and he starts whistling, and his head actually turns into a wolf, you see. They call this wolves. When you're after a pretty woman, you're called a wolf, see. You got to understand that. So that's dealing with the anima or the animal nature of sexuality, you see. Now, something else I want to get into, and it's going to tie into the next tape that we're going to deal with. And first of all, you have to understand something, that we exist as something more than just the physical body. The physical body, you have different, at least 7, there's probably hundreds, but at least 7 known bodies that exist within you. You have an astral body or etheric body. You have a physical body, a spirit body, and all these different bodies exist within you. If you look under a microscope at anything on the physical realm, your physical body, and you look at the molecules, you'll notice that the actual molecules, or actually the space in between the molecules, are bigger than the molecules themselves. And so you're able to move outside the physical realm. And you've heard stories of people moving through walls and moving through different things, using certain sciences to manipulate physical matter. But within you, when you lay down to sleep, you go into a dream state, and one of those bodies that you have move into a different dimension, a whole nother world. When you think of thought, your thought is no longer, your mind is projected outside your physical body. You're thinking far, you could be in New York, you could be thinking of someplace in England. Some people can see places that they've never been, you see. So you're able to, your mental body, astral body, and various other bodies that you have are able to move outside the physical body based on the space between the molecules being bigger than the molecules themselves. So you have different bodies that actually exist in the same space at the same time. When you walk down the street, those different bodies are not as solid as the physical body. So they are slightly outside the physical body already. When you walk past someone, you feel a vibration. Or if someone's behind you, you can feel the energy of that person behind you, because your other bodies extend outside the physical body, you see. And that is called an aura. That's part of it. So when you, as I said, when you think of thought, when you lay down to sleep, when you do various things, you project your different bodies in different manners, you see. And so I had to lay that down so you can understand what I'm going to talk about. Now, on the last tape I said that the white man came first. Now, I'm not talking about, as I said before, the European or the created white man created by Yaqub. I'm talking about an ancient being. An ancient being. The sun releases photon radiation. That radiation breaks up and reforms or reform into soft particles. The soft particles come through the Earth's atmosphere, break up and change again into a different type of soft particle. Those soft particles, which are the rays of the sun, enter to the Earth's atmosphere and go into the Earth, impregnating Mother Earth, causing life to grow. Those same particles that go deep within from the sun, that go deep within Mother Earth, also cause gravity. Soft particles cause gravity. Without that sun ray, you wouldn't be able to stay or exist on the physical plane and able to walk on the ground, you see. Everything that's on the Earth would float up into the Earth's atmosphere and into space. The Earth would spin off its so-called axis and out of its spiral and out into a chaotic space without the rays, the photon radiation changing into these particular soft particles. So then, knowing that, we have to understand that in the Nag Hammadi library, Sophia is created from the great vaginal spirit, which we're going to get into. The great vaginal spirit creates Sophia. Sophia has a son without the authorization of the great spirit. That son is called Yabota, who had a lion's head and a snake body. You see. Of course, the lions always represent Leo. Leo the lion, which is dealing with the sun. The sun that the Nag Hammadi in the Apocryphon of John is talking about is the actual sun, and the actual physical sun that we see. And the only reason why we see it is because it reflects off the Earth's atmosphere. So this particular deity, who later Sophia has called Yabota, she even mates with him later, her own so-called son, allegorical, because the sun in the sky mates with Mother Earth, the sun and the mother. The sun impregnates the mother and causes life to grow and causes gravity. She was sorry that she had created this particular sun in the Nag Hammadi library, because it went against the whole principle of the great vaginal spirit who created her. This particular deity becomes Jehovah, the jealous God, you see, who is the sun, who is Leo, with the snake body. He becomes the jealous God in your Bible. And we're going to deal with that on the next tape. But I just want to give you an overview. Now, if the sun causes all gravity of the physical realm, and in the Nag Hammadi library, he is called Yabota, or the jealous God, who creates a secondary race. We're going to get into that later. But he is the jealous God. Jealous of what? First of all, if there's no other God besides me, which he said out of his own mouth, and according to the King James Bible, if he is the only God, then what is he actually jealous of? You see. So, you have to ask yourself this. Of course, now, let me stop and mention this first. When you're dealing with melanin, we've heard all the great things about melanin, and it is, you know, helps you to not get sunburned and skin cancer. Melanin. You see, all the great Richard King, Delbert Blair. I mean, there's a lot of information on melanin and all the great properties and all the things that do for us, which we're happy about on the physical level. Although melanin has a lot of spiritual things dealing with it also, quite a few. Probably more spiritual than physical, you see. But yes, melanin makes us the best there is, but you have to understand it also can make you the worst there is. It works in both directions. Black people could be the strongest, prettiest people in the world. You can also find the weakest, ugliest people in the world. We are the best of everything based on melanin. You see, based on melanin. If there were no sun, we would not need melanin. If there were no sun. According to the Nag Hammadi library, before the sun was created, it was Sophia. And before Sophia was the great vaginal spirit, or the black hole, you see, which we all existed within this black hole. There existed no sun. Therefore, there was no need for melanin. The actual white people or pale people that I spoke of, who came first, was ourselves. That was us. We are the first people we are eternal. We were never created. We were always here part of this great vaginal spirit, you see, and now existing in this physical dimension wherein the sun that you see in the sky that comes up every morning keeps you physically trapped through gravity in the physical plane, trapped on the physical level, you see, through the actual photon radiation that causes gravity, you see. So now we have to understand something. Where the whole concept of hell being a place of fire, you see, hell being a place of fire. And the person running it was a red devil, which was dealing with the red menstrual blood that created this Yabota, who had the snake body, you see, who had the snake body, and the lion head, which was Leo, the lion, which was the sun. You see, you got to understand that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that because there's a lot of information dealing with that. Now, I talked about how we have these different bodies on the astral plane, etheric, mental, spirit bodies. Well, first let's talk about this. We hear a lot of, or see a lot of information, pictures, and a lot of hoopla about UFOs. And yes, I've even seen a UFO myself. Me personally, the ones I've seen, I believe, are satellites and various other things. I've seen one, and not by myself, or with other people when I've seen this, satellites way up in space. I took my camera and zoomed in on this particular thing, and it looked like some kind of siren on top of it. So yes, there are unidentified flying objects. Of course, these things are most likely government operations and so forth, and whatever else it may be. But there also a large amount of UFOs are not what we think they are. A large amount of UFOs are actually sky creatures, living UFOs. And these particular UFOs are huge, floating, chaotic, amoeba-looking things. And most of the time most of the time they're not, we can't see them with the five senses. But radar, infrared cameras pick these things up. And every now and then with the right lighting, someone catch these things on camera. Now, I'm not saying all of them are. All the UFOs are living creatures, but the majority of them are living entities. You see, living entities, sky creatures, moving through a dimension slightly higher than our own. And the only time we get to see these things is if we, sometimes the infrared light of the sun, different lighting, and you get a glance of these things and you think you saw a UFO. Or you may see something in the sky that looks like a UFO, you see, has some kind of strange shape to it. Sky creatures. Now, these same sky creatures also exist on the ground and in different areas of the planet Earth. The ones that exist on ground are different from the ones that exist in the air, you see. The sky creatures that exist in the air are actually thought forms. These are energy creatures that are manifest based on the thinking of the masses of people. And this is the whole reason for consciousness, you see, because certain thoughts, long meditative thoughts, can manifest these particular sky creatures. and they take on the nature of the person that brought it to life, you see. And they cause sickness, they cause happiness, they do various things based on the thinking and the energy and the power of the person who brought it to life. Sky creatures. Now you have something else that exists on the ground, and those are not sky creatures. Those are astral zombies. These are real living creatures.